Welcome to the Master Your Millions podcast, the show all about your financial potential and leaving a legacy for future generations. Here are your hosts, Jason and Scott Henderson.
Welcome back, everyone. I am your host, Scott Henderson, and my co-host is Dr. J. We've got a special guest coming on today. Jason, who do we have coming on?
Well, Scott, today we have Joseph LoPresti, and I hope I pronounced that correctly, Joe. Joe is the founder of Arlington Wealth Management and frankly has multiple decades in the financial service industry. He has a very unique view about how to secure prosperity and to have financial peace of mind. He is a father of three girls and comes to us from Illinois. So, Joe, we're grateful that you're on the show with us today.
Thanks for having me, Jason. I'm grateful to be here.
Great. So, Joe, as I've learned a little bit about your background, sort of doing a little bit of homework about you as you were introduced to us, first and foremost, give us a little overview of how it is that you grew up and then got into the financial industry.
Yeah, sure. I grew up here in the Chicago area, lifelong Chicagoan. And out of college, I started in the industry. I started working for some of the bigger banking brokerage firms that, are kind of the household names that everybody knows of, and did that for a few years. I pretty quickly realized that it was more of a sales type of culture and not, I wasn't really learning how to advise my clients and, be a good advisor. And, that was very much an investment focused time of my career. So I quickly started to branch out and self-educate on investment strategy. In fact, I developed some of the proprietary strategies we use today at Arlington Wealth Management. I wrote a book on investments almost 20 years ago now. And then as our clients got a little wealthier, we realized that they needed more than just investment advice. And we began to broaden our services into advanced planning in a number of different areas beyond investments like tax mitigation, wealth transfer planning, asset protection to protect against catastrophic risks, and a whole variety of advanced planning topics. And even further, we developed a niche in advising entrepreneurs on how to really coordinate their various levels of planning. So we look at it as business strategy, wealth planning, and their life intention, and coordinating all of that into a unified strategy for them to live the life they want and secure their freedom.
So since you talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, what were some of the mistakes that they would make before talking to you?
Joe, you
you're
muted
muted.
yourself.
Good question. I think that one of the mistakes that they make is that they tend to really be heads down on their business, and they're not focusing as much about planning before they exit their business to enhance their wealth. There's a number of different ways that they could do that if they're proactive about it. So I think that's one thing that the pre-sale wealth management or pre-exit wealth management is not given enough attention, and they miss opportunities to build more wealth. That's number one. And number two, I think their advisors that they work with. They're working with individual advisors, an accountant, an attorney, a financial advisor, insurance agents, perhaps business advisors, but they're getting siloed advice from each of these advisors, and there isn't like a quarterback that is coordinating that advice and really making sure that there's synergies to the advice, and then it's focused on what the business owner really wants to achieve in their life. So I think having that coordination is very important for a business owner, which is of course much different than, say, somebody who amassed wealth that isn't a business owner.
So let's play the opposite side of the coin then. Out of all the clients you've had over the years, when they first started, is there anyone in particular that stood out and what was the reason?
Uh, well, there's a few of them, I would say, Scott. I think the one that stood out the most is a entrepreneur, founding entrepreneur, started a business, extremely successful business, and sold the business to and it was a large sale. Um, and they had enough wealth to where they actually started their own family office. Um, I don't know if that's a term that many of your listeners, I'm sure some are familiar with, but if you're not, a family office is a team of professionals that works just for that family, right? So instead of dealing with an accountant separately and an attorney and financial advisors and real estate managers, for example, they're all inside an office and they're working just for that family. Um, but they really didn't start laying the groundwork for that until after the sale, and they already had the money, and then they were dealing with, well, how do we invest this money and how do we live the life that we want? So that's where I think the pre-planning becomes very important because they missed, I think, some opportunities. They they made some mistakes along the way because they weren't in the family office business. They were in a different industry, and that's what they knew. They didn't really know how to manage their own wealth because it was all tied up inside a private company. And that's how most of our clients are today. That, business owners, tend to have 80% of their wealth inside their company. And when that wealth starts to transition from a private company to, being liquid, and they have to, figure out how to invest it, they need good advisors that are experienced in working with that transition. Tax strategy is ultra important during that transition and afterwards. So they're getting, tax efficient income for, to fund their lifestyle when it's not income coming from their business that's funding the lifestyle. They have to figure out how to, derive their cash flow. The asset protection is much different, right? Because assets inside a corporate, corporate entity, and now they're more personal assets. So that the asset protection strategy has to shift with them, and the wealth transfer as well. As they had desires to create multi-generational wealth, and so there's a lot of advanced wealth and estate planning that goes along with it.
So I've always been curious. Is there like a certain number that you need to be able to make a family office work, or is there a different metric that you look at if you were advising someone that, let's say they're going to sell a business and have some money coming?
Yeah, it's hard to put a number on it. But a family office is expensive to run. You have to have full-time staff and probably a CEO running or somebody managing the staff and maybe a chief financial officer on the family office, not to mention all of the individual professional specialists that you have to have, legal and wealth management and accounting and business advisory, et cetera, risk mitigation and so forth. So it's hard to put a number on it. But family offices um, have become more and more popular. The history of family office, it might be interesting to know, started with the Rockefeller family back in, I think it was 1882. And the reason that they started a family office was they were getting conflicting advice from their advisors. And they found that very frustrating. So they decided to just start their own office where they hired the advisors full time to work just for that family. And over time, the ultra wealthy people today, the household names, they all have their own family office. And the history has kind of morphed into, there's multifamily offices where maybe a family doesn't have enough wealth to start their own office, but they could join in with, several other families and hire the same team that's working for those, just those families. And it's transitioned more recently, and what we run is a fractional family office. And what that looks like is we have a team of specialists in different areas, tax planning, risk mitigation, wealth management, legal, business advisory. And those specialists are available to our clients when needed. So they don't have the expense of having a full-time team of professionals, but they can have them at their fingertips when they need a particular niche level of planning in any of those areas. We could bring those specialists in and really bring a lot of deep resources into our client relationships.
So to re-ask what Scott did, what is the smallest number that you've seen for a family office? I mean, if you have someone going to have an exit of 5 million, is that enough? Is 20 million enough? It's 30. I mean, I know you said I really haven't seen that, but do you have a gut feel where that would be? That was
This for
someone's
a single
goal,
family
right?
office, for one family
Yeah, if
office.
that was somebody's goal, I want to start a family office someday. What do they need to be thinking?
I think it's much more than that. I think you're in the hundreds of millions to really make it be economical to start your own family office.
And so something like let's call it fractional family office, like what you're doing. What's the range there? Like anywhere from your 8 figures to nine? Would that be a
Yeah, I would say, probably the sweet spot is 5 to maybe upwards of 75 million. You start getting beyond that, multifamily offices tend to be a little bit more desirable because they're just slightly more customizable to that family than a fractional family office. But yeah, if I look at it as any business owner that has complexity. And what we tend to find is that the issues our clients find themselves in is they don't know how to get from where they are today to where they want to go. And that's securing their freedom, achieving their life goals, living the life that they want. They don't know how to unravel all the complexity that is in the way. So, think about the types of decisions that a business owner has to make. There are financial decisions, tax decisions, wealth transfer decisions, asset protection decisions, for some charitable decisions because charitable giving is important to them. And that's on the personal, the wealth side of the decision making. Then there are a whole array of business decisions that they have to make on employees, customers, vendors, suppliers, as they start to think about their end game. What's the best way to sell? Who are the ideal buyers? What's my legacy going to look like that I built? How do I protect all of that? And then they have to deal with these individual advisors, a financial advisor, attorney, accountant, insurance agents, business advisors they probably have, depending on how big the business is. Eventually, if they want to exit out, there's a business intermediary, a broker or an M&A professional. They have to deal with the buyer. So there's just so much that I think somebody who started a business and is really good at what they do in that business, this isn't what they do. This isn't what they know. So they really start to feel frustrated and they procrastinate because they don't know how to coordinate it all. And that's where a
I feel
family
frustrated
office.
listening to you. I feel frustrated listening to you for the fact there's so much, right? There's so many things that would come towards the end, if you will, at the exit. That's oh man, had I known that back then, I could have done this, I could have done that, and I'm
could
guessing
have
that's
bought Bitcoin
why.
in 2009,
It,
things like that.
yeah, bought Bitcoin when it was. Yeah, you're right, stuff like that. Uh, yeah, that's probably why you wrote your book, right, Joe? You have a book called Exit by Design, correct?
I do, yes. I wrote it with my
And
daughter, actually.
which one? The oldest, youngest?
She's my middle daughter, Marissa.
Oh,
The
okay. Good
favorite.
guess.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
and that is something that's on Amazon, correct?
It is on Amazon. Exit by Design is the title. There's also a website, for any of your listeners that would like to just download an ebook version of it, they can at exitbydesignbook.com.
And we'll
Okay,
put
and
that
we
in the
will
show notes, guys.
right,
So
and
keep
that
going,
seems like
Jason.
to
Sorry to
me.
interrupt.
I was going to say that seems like to me that would be a great first start, or at least get an overview of some of the things that are coming down the road. We have a lot of younger entrepreneurials that come on the show, that listen to the show, and they're being very successful. I'm thinking of one of the real estate guys, Scott, that you and I both know quite well. All of a sudden he's doing very well, and he has multiple streams of income, and he needs to be thinking of some of these things, Joe, that you mentioned a few minutes ago that he hasn't thought of, right? And to get an inkling of what's coming, it would be a great place is to come to your book. Um, what would you say are some of the biggest headaches or hiccups towards the end when they're starting to exit?
I think it's I think the biggest is just I'll go back to what I mentioned earlier. It's that proactive planning and developing, I would call it a personal action plan that considers all things exit related, because business owners don't know what they don't know. And that's why, I think something like 80% of owners who sell regret it about a year later, because there was something that they could have done different or better, and they just didn't know about it. So, I mean, you could fill in the blank. It could be that they talked to somebody else who sold, and their advisors had a better tax strategy that put more money in their pocket. They could have had a different type of transaction, or a different type of buyer, or treated their employees differently through the process. There's just a whole number of things that business owner who maybe spent 10, 20, 30 years, building their business. It's kind of like um, their baby, and how they identify themselves. And when they leave that, there's a big gap in their life. And so, having purpose in life, it's just very important to think all this stuff through ahead of time, and to do it with advisors that have gone through it with other business owners, so they know the things you're going to be dealing with and can help you become aware of them, and help you make the best decisions possible, because you are aware of them and you're educated on what the process is that you're going to go through.
I know that you're a real big advocate that once people have accumulated some wealth, that you want it to be actively safeguarded and to be protected. What would you say are your top three vehicles or techniques or strategies that you say are best in safeguarding wealth, right? Because again, mastering your millions all about accumulating, enjoying, and passing on that wealth. Well, in my mind, you're unable to really enjoy that wealth if you're constantly thinking, am I going to lose it? Someone going to steal it? I'm saying? Always looking over your
Yeah.
shoulder. What would you say are your top three favorite trash strategies?
Yeah, so I think asset protection is huge, hugely important. Liability and various types of lawsuits. So making sure, as you're going through your life as a business owner, early on, it's okay to take a little bit more risk and maybe not have as much asset protection coverage, because there's some expense behind that. But once you hit what I call your freedom point, and that's when you've built up enough wealth, whether it's inside your business and whatever you've accumulated outside it, but you can live the life that you want without worrying about money. That's when you really want to focus on wealth preservation. So,
What does that look like? Is that a certain group of blue chip stocks? Is that a certain amount of real estate? Is that life
yeah,
insurance? What does that look like?
I think it depends what stage of life that the person is in. If they're still in business, it could be just protecting the value of that business. So carrying the adequate amount of, of liability protection. Then depending on the business, it might be product liability or cyber liability. Uh, you know, uh, just making sure that you're protected that way, and then really focusing on the value of the business and know what the value is, know what improves the value or what maintains value in a business. Because if the ultimate goal is transitioning out and you're going to be selling the business or even transitioning it internally to management or employees or whoever is going to be the next owner, they're going to look at the business a little differently than the way that you look at it. There's certain things they want to see to know the business has value, not only in what they're paying for, but that it could grow for them because they're making the new investment and they have to take what you've built up to that point and make it become profitable and worth the transaction for them. So really focusing in on the attractiveness of your business from a buyer's perspective and the
And is that
readiness.
basically that attractiveness? Is that basically the numbers? I mean, because a buyer's
Um,
going to come in, there's not going to be a whole lot of emotion there, right? And they're going to look the profit and loss statement. They're going to look at your balance sheet, and I don't know that that's the case. I'm asking, is it going to be boiled down to more really hard evidence or hard facts saying, okay, this is this and this and this, versus interpretive things? Well, we've got a really good reputation, or we have, you know what I'm saying? Because the business
yes.
owner, that's his baby. I mean, it's his heart and soul for potentially several decades. And oh, it's worth, a huge number. And really
Right.
on paper, it's not. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, I think it's even more, it's a little different than just the numbers. Certainly the numbers are part of it. But mostly what they want to know is they could trust the numbers, that they could, that you have good books and records. And so it's important, a few years before exiting that you really solidify the records, and work with a good accountant that could get everything in order. But it's going to be things like, hey, what do your customers look like? Or are you over dependent on one or two big customers? Okay, well, what if they don't like me as much as you and I lose that big customer? That's a big risk to a buyer or a supplier that, you're over dependent on a supplier or a key employee. If you are, that's fine. You just have to build protections around that, like lock those key employees in through deferred compensation plans or bonus plans that are deferred for a few years into the future. So a new buyer comes in, knows that that key employee is likely to stick around for some time afterwards. How dependent is the business on the owner? If they're the main, rainmaker, well, if they're not there, you know, unless you plan to work for the new buyer, they're not going to find as much value in that business if it's all dependent on you. So it's things like that that I think really a buyer is going to look at more, I would say, the soft evaluation of the business than just the hard numbers.
So okay, this will probably be edited out. I'm just trying to remember what I was going to say. Um, oh, gosh, I just lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. The the numbers. That was a great point. Um, I was going to ask you about. Gosh, I'm embarrassed. What was it? I was saying that. Oh, okay. So, as part of our podcast, and you're going to hear it on the outro, is that mastering your millions all starts with your mind and your team. Make sure they're the best. Now, from your perspective in designing an exit and preserving wealth, what would you say are some of the one or two first key people that you need to be on your team? Because you said a minute ago, if you have employees, make sure you lock them into deferred compensation or some sort of golden handcuff or something. What would you say to young, and it doesn't necessarily have to be young, new entrepreneurs right? Who are some very key people that you need to have on the team, at least, a few years before your exit, hopefully a lot longer, that would make the business more valuable.
Yeah, so I think that could be very dependent on the business, of course. But if we're making it more universal, you need there's three or four. You need a good financial advisor, you need a good attorney, and you need a good accountant, right? And then whoever your business advisors are, maybe they're coaches or consultants or people on your team, your key employees. Um, I think that's all of that's very important. If it's then moving into thinking about the end game, um, you need to have a good business intermediary, right? Somebody who knows how to get your business ready for sale or exit or transition, whatever the end game is. Somebody who knows the whole process and understands it and can guide you, through that, so you don't make what I call the dumb tax. The dumb tax is you make decisions that on information you just didn't even know about, or options that are available that you're not aware of, that you could have made it a better situation. So I think
Okay,
those are the core team that you need. And it's hard to bring all that together, right? When the accountant works in his silo and the attorney works in his silo and the financial advisor. But if you have a team that's used to working together for a business owner, and then well, all they really have to do is get a good handle on where you are and where you want to go, get that vivid picture of what the future looks like. Then they could work together in guiding you through all of this complexity toward the other end, and that's where you get clarity and prosperity.
and I think as business owners, they need to start uh, forcing or demanding that the individual advisors are not siloed. You need to start talking, or I'm going to find someone else, right? Because the business owner is the one that control. I mean, he's the one that's hired the others, right? They can't be. It just seems like I see a lot of business owners that do exactly what you're talking about. My financial planner says this, my attorney says this, and this is, and they're not talking. Yet that's so critical. We're running a little bit out of time, Joe. However, I want to get to this key point of some of your background and what you're passionate about, and that is about financial literacy. Now, there was a mention of the Foundation of Investor Education Institute, IEI. Is that something that you founded? And it's something that you're actively involved in? Tell us just real briefly about that and how's that helping, you know, Americans build wealth and
Yeah.
be in a better position.
Yeah, I am passionate on education. So the Investor Education Institute is something that I founded many years ago. I think it's probably close to 20 years ago now. So I taught courses at some of the local community colleges here in the Chicago area to the adult community, right? Not to the student body, but more the adult community. I had a radio show in Chicago for 13 years that talked about investments and financial matters in general. Um, and so I think it's important because people aren't natural investors. This kind of goes back to our investment focus days, which we still spend a lot of time on. But as I mentioned earlier, it's very broad now into business strategy and advanced wealth planning, and really bringing in the life planning to help somebody really achieve what they want in life. But literacy is very important because our education system just doesn't really cover financial literacy. Unfortunately, it's just amazing how some very, very educated people don't have a lot of good knowledge behind financial matters.
Why is that? And I'm with you. That is so baffling to me that in one of the wealthiest, most prosperous nations ever, and yet our financial education in our, K through 12, and even in, post into college and things, that financial piece is not there. Why is that?
That's a good question, Jason. I wish I knew the answer, but we definitely should have more of it in our school system.
Agree. And that's part of what this podcast is all about. And I'm sure that's what you're doing too with your institute. That's really awesome. Joe, it's been awesome having you on the show. Like we said earlier, everyone, we are going to put the website and even a link to the book that you could go download. Joe, is that the best way if someone wanted to work with you and find out more about your fractional family office? Is that the best way to this through that one website that you already gave? Is there another one that would be better?
Yeah, so that's one way. There's another one as well, and that is arlington-wealth.com. So that's our company website where you could connect with me and, read more about what we do and who our clients are and how we work with them.
Okay, great. Real quick, we ask this of every guest. I want you to tell us what really is the next mountain or big goal that you're going after, and also extend an invitation to you to come back on the show for a celebration when you accomplish that.
Okay, excellent. Well, there's a few of them. I think it's really developing the fractional family office into into a company, whereas right now we have a system in place and a way to communicate and collaborate with these other professionals. So, if we have a tax situation for a client and we know that there's some niche tax planning available, an expert, we could bring them into the relationship. But we want to solidify that into a family office, and then we're in the process of setting that up. The name of it's going to be Clear Path Family Office. And that's going to be a family office that works just for entrepreneurs and helping them get through the complexity that they face to the other side of prosperity and guiding them through all of the.
Give me an endpoint. Give me an endpoint. When will you know that you've accomplished this goal so that you can come back and we have a party?
Well, I would say probably in about 6 months we should have that set up and rolling. And
okay.
I think
would
that'll
that be set up and rolling with 5 clients, 10 clients?
Okay, so you want a number of clients? Yeah, let's say
gross revenue of 250 million. I'm looking for something concrete, right? So he said, I've done it. And I want you to throw it out there, right? We had someone that was on the show that is kind of an entertainer speaker, and he goes, I want to speak to an audience of 100,000 people.
Wow. Yeah,
said,
that's a good goal.
Okay, cool.
That's good.
When that happens, you contact me. I promise I'll be in the front row. So something along those lines. So throw it out there. This is a big goal. Let's let it happen.
Okay, so let's say new clients, because many of our current clients will become clients of that organization. Okay. But let's say 5 new business owner clients that we're not currently working with today, that there's a good fit and that we could add a significant amount of value in their life. And just from those clients, well, the revenue that would be derived would be hard to say, because it could be, let's say anywhere from $20,000 per client to $100,000 per client, depending on, what they need and how big their business is and so forth.
Okay, great. Let's say an average of 65. Find new clients with an average of 65,000. Fair enough? Feel comfortable with that?
Sounds good.
Make you nervous at all?
With about 325,000 in revenue. I'll be back on your show.
Okay, we love it.
Thanks for listening to Master Your Millions with Jason and Scott Henderson. Check the show notes for any links or contact information about today's guest. Make sure to follow the show so you don't miss any future episodes.